how common is it for a confidential human source to be charged with lying to the FBI, and specifically one they've been working with for 15 years?
Yeah. You're actually the first one to ask me that question, Guy, and that is a very good question. Donald Trump can't remember as much as Joe Biden has forgotten in his life. Joe Biden's age, and I have seen this firsthand, gives him a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom and experience. And I'm going to give you a couple examples because this is a longer format, so we have time. All right. Hey, Guy.
Oh, wow. Congressman, can you hear me okay?
I got you. Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Let me make the most of your time here. So again, my name is Guy. I'm a live streamer on Twitch and YouTube where I talk politics. And me and my community have been following you and all the Democrats throughout this 118th Congress. And it's just been a real pleasure. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thanks for following. I think it's terrific that you're invested in this and that all your viewers are. We need everybody involved.
Yes, sir. So I have a couple of questions here. You spent a decade as assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. So I have to ask you about this confidential human source that was indicted recently by Special Counsel David Weiss for lying to the FBI. This is the guy at the center of the Republicans' impeachment inquiry who claims the Bidens took millions of dollars to influence foreign policy, which is total nonsense. And now he's been caught lying. So how common is it for a confidential human source to be charged with lying to the FBI, and specifically one they've been working with for 15 years?
Yeah. You're actually the first one to ask me that question, Guy, and that is a very good question. And it is very rare because at the beginning of a relationship between a confidential human source and the FBI, there's extensive vetting of all the information that that source provides. Because as you can imagine, confidential human sources generally have access to illegal or criminal information. And you can only have access to that information if you are somehow immersed in that world. We used to say as a prosecutor that if we could have nurses and nuns as witnesses, we would love to do that, but they don't know about bad guys. And so you know that these human sources mix with bad guys. So you're always going to be very careful to confirm and corroborate all of the information that is provided. And a lot of times these sources do also make recordings, so you can hear the conversation itself. By all accounts, this was a very well-known and extensively used source for many, many, many years, who had a almost daily interaction with his handler at the FBI, and had provided a lot of valuable and credible information in the past. And for him to go rogue and start working with Russian intelligence to interfere in our election by planting this false information, and to do it largely, I guess, because he strongly dislikes President Biden, is what the reporting is really, really unusual. Now, I will say that it's not unusual for sources to commit crimes after they become a source for the reasons that I explained, which is they come from a world where they either have committed crimes before or they are very close with those who do commit crimes. So that part of it is not crazy. What is kind of unique in this case is that he used his status as a human source as part of his criminal activity. It wasn't that he went out and did, a drug deal separately and didn't tell the FBI. That happens. But it's that he used his position as a human source and almost as a double agent to try to plant a false story and interfere in our election on at the behest and desire of Vladimir Putin, and that is very unusual.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that he was a Russian asset the whole time? Is there any possibility that he was a Russian asset the whole time and he was put into this position to provide credible information to the FBI over the course of a decade with the goal of one day you're going to give them a story that we want you to give? Or do you think that he was corrupted or turned for whatever personal reasons or maybe financial gain?
It's too hard to tell right now, but it's a good question. And I think what the FBI is going to be doing is going back through absolutely everything that he has ever told them. I would be curious how many recordings they have that he has made, because that would give them a very good idea of his credibility. And if they were just using 1023s, which are the procedure by which they take information from a source, and then they would look to travel records or bank records or other things to corroborate and confirm what he said. That will make a big difference in terms of what the FBI thinks about his long-term relationship with Russian intelligence.
Gotcha. And yesterday, Hunter Biden testified on Capitol Hill, and you were in the room. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to see how that went down. It sounded like it was a flat-out brawl in there. But you said that after the first hour of his testimony that this should be the nail in the coffin of this impeachment inquiry. But I think everyone knows it's not going to be, because the only thing the Republicans have is to continue this investigation all the way through the election, because if they put up articles of impeachment, they probably don't have the votes among themselves. And
right.
If they don't put up articles of impeachment, their base is going to cry foul. So you mentioned their next step, their next ploy, which is the perjury trap. Can you talk about that a little bit and what to expect and how you guys will counteract that?
Yeah. So it was interesting. I mean, the first hour was the hour that the Republican staff counsel questioned Hunter Biden and went through all of the or most of the foreign business ventures that he had that they have alleged were the source of the influence peddling by other countries. And he had already indicated, the Republicans already knew from many other witnesses that there was no evidence actually linking President Biden to any of Hunter's business ventures. But what Hunter was able to really effectively do was to go through each of these deals and explain his own relationship with the business partners, explain how his business ventures, unlike Jared Kushner's, never involved a foreign government entity. They just involved foreign companies, international companies, and that he was very persuasive, very convincing that he not only was his father never involved in any of his business ventures, but that he very intentionally kept his father out of them. Even, by the way, when his father was out of office between 2017 and 2021, when there were opportunities that he had and some of his business partners wanted him to get his father involved, he stopped doing business with them because he didn't like that that's what they were doing. So he just completely eviscerated any remaining doubts, to the extent there are any. I had none, but to the extent that there are any, for any people out there, that he absolutely eviscerated any doubts as to whether or not his father had any role, ever benefited from, or ever did anything in return for some benefit from his business interests. So I was curious what is going to happen, because the foreign influence peddling stuff with China, et cetera, is totally blown out of the water. Then, because of the Smirnov stuff that we were just talking about, these bogus Burisma allegations are actually, a Russian intelligence operation. So there's nowhere for them to go with any legitimacy along with this investigation. So I was to continue this investigation. So I was very curious. What were they going to do? Because this transcript will come out today or tomorrow. It should, and everyone will get to see the answers that Hunter Biden provided. So at the end of the day, as you point out, Chairman Comer comes out and says that there are some, he mentions that they got some evidence that's helpful. I have no idea what that would be, but that there are some discrepancies in things that he has said, and so they want to have a public hearing. Well, obviously, he was under oath yesterday as part of the deposition. He would be under oath at a public hearing. He also is a criminal defendant, and he has been charged with two different indictments, and he has conditions of bail. And one of those conditions is that you not commit any other crimes and that you clearly do not lie under oath. So it now appears that what they want to do is they just want to bring him back in to testify again about many of the same things and see if they can catch him saying something different than what he said yesterday, which is a quintessential perjury trap, where you're not actually trying to further an investigation. You are just trying to trip someone up under oath so that you can charge them with perjury. And it is pretty clear because he answered every single question they had all day long, stayed the whole day and answered every question. They don't have any more substantive questions for him. They just want to, A, let Marjorie Taylor Greene embarrass him, and B, try to catch him lying. And that is not a legitimate purpose for any investigation.
So just a last quick question follow-up then. Is there anything you can do to prep for that or to counteract that? I mean, this is what they seem to have done with Mayorkas, with his impeachment, where they claim he lied under oath about having operational control of the border. So is there anything you can do in anticipation of this, or you're just going to have to go blow for blow with them when the public hearing happens?
Well, look, I think, part of what we did with Mayorkas and part of what we are doing here is we are getting out in front of this. So that it is important for everyone to understand what's really going on here. Because what you will hear from the Republicans is some bogus about how they need to come in and ask him to explain discrepancies. That's garbage. But that will get plenty of traction in the right-wing ecosphere. And so part of what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to do is be very vocal, be very forceful in explaining what is really going on here. And that can raise the public pressure on the Republicans to reverse course and to make a decision that this is not the right pathway for them to go. With Mayorkas, I think a lot of our work helped to convince 3 Republicans to vote against his impeachment, and they lost their first effort to impeach him. That is humiliating, and that is embarrassing. And it demonstrates the softness and weakness of their case against him, that they couldn't even get a majority in their first attempt to impeach him, and that they had to wait for someone else to come back so they could have the numbers. It completely undermined the messaging that they were trying to say. And part of that is because we were so consistently hammering home what a baseless impeachment this is, and for some of the reasons you said, as well as others. And so, that is the way we can use our platform as elected officials. And it's certainly something that I am trying to do, both as someone who's a former prosecutor and understands how criminal investigations work and proper investigations work, someone who led an impeachment investigation, so I understand impeachment. This is an area that I happen to have a lot of experience and comfort with. And so I'm trying to be very vocal in calling out the Republicans for their bad faith.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you on the Oversight Committee. I see all the Democrats, they give extra time to you, and you make the most of it. And it's just been wonderful to watch all the Democrats on oversight working together. And it sucks and it's embarrassing. You guys have to waste your time pushing back on Republican nonsense and instead of addressing our problems in this country. But I'm thankful that you guys take it seriously and have risen to the occasion. I want to switch gears a little bit. Speaking of the Republicans on oversight, from the outside, it seems like everybody hates each other. But you seem like someone who's going to Congress to try to get stuff done. So do you get along with any of the Republicans on the Oversight Committee?
Absolutely. I get along with,
I figured you'd say that.
A lot of them. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene and I are going to go get a coffee anytime soon. But I have very good relationships with some of them, and I have perfectly cordial and friendly relationships with others. It's interesting because my background is as a trial lawyer, so I'm used to going into court in a very antagonistic way and doing battle with a defense lawyer, and then you leave the courtroom and you're out of that arena. And so I'm perfectly able to do battle in the committee room, but then step out and be friendly and talk to them about other issues and other real problems, as you point out, that we should really be addressing, which is exactly what I had hoped to do and what we all Democrats really hope to do. But some of the Republicans are very capable of doing that as well. Some of them, I think Chairman Comer is very personally invested in this investigation, and it has really, really gone poorly for him. So he takes all of this very personally. But certainly there are others that don't. Tim Burchett is another congressman from Tennessee, very, very conservative congressman. But a very nice guy. We get along very well. Kelly Armstrong is another one from North Dakota who was a criminal defense lawyer. And we talk a lot about revamping the criminal laws and potentially, he's now leaving Congress to run for governor in North Dakota, but to potentially work on some of those things. And so I am able certainly to, put that fighting and the investigative stuff committee room on the one side, and then work on legislation separately. And a lot of people are able to do that. Some are not.
Yeah, I wish that we, the public, could see some of these interactions more, because it paints this picture that you guys are fighting, and then that kind of drips down to the rest of us. You've got this bagel caucus where you bring people together to enjoy bagels. I think that's a great thing that I wish we had more of. So how do you think we have a more of a public display of what really happens in Congress, like you said, where you guys can fight in the committee room or whatever, but you see each other in the hallways and you're interacting? And you even said in an interview with Jen Psaki not too long ago that there's hundreds of members of Congress that are working on projects together all the time. They just don't have any avenue to put their legislation on the floor due to whatever speaker is in control. So I guess my question is, how do we see more of you guys working together? And I feel like that's kind of something that you care about as well.
Absolutely. And that was the real sort of derivation of the Bagel Caucus, is that when I got here, I realized that because of the schedule that we keep when we're here in DC, where we come in late in the afternoon on the first day, we have 2 full days usually, and then we leave the morning after. We don't have very much time in DC to actually do the work. Now, we have staffs and we're working 7 days a week on the stuff that's going on here, but we are not here personally that much. And there were very few opportunities to get to know colleagues on the other side of the aisle, outside of the House floor, outside of the committee rooms. And so, I'm a member from New York City, Lower Manhattan, and Northwest Brooklyn, which unquestionably, undebatably, I don't want to hear anything else, has the best bagels in the world. And so I thought, you know what, let's bring down some bagels from my district and let's bring everybody together. for breakfast, once a month or so, just to, break bread, so to speak, and chat and get to know each other outside of the confines of the committee. And it's been great. And I personally look for every opportunity to do that. I play in the congressional baseball game, which is Democrats versus Republicans, but is something that we talk about a lot. I play on the congressional football team, which is actually Democrats and Republicans together against the Capitol Police. And so we have practice in the mornings together. And so we're getting to know each other there. Every opportunity I have to get to know my Republican colleagues on a personal level, I take, because those personal relationships are really important. And it's easy to attack someone on television. It's easy to attack someone on Twitter. But if you have a personal relationship with someone, it's harder to do it, and you don't want to do it as much. And so I do think there are a lot of good, strong personal relationships between Democrats and Republicans. And what you're talking about is looking at the committee room or watching someone appear on TV, and it's very partisan. It's very politicized. It is very antagonistic and aggressive. But you don't see the majority of members on television. And that was the point I was making to Jen Psaki, which is there are some of us who are more combative and more involved in the partisan investigations. But there are a lot of members who have come here not for that purpose at all, avoid that at all costs, and just want to do the work quietly to try to solve the problems. And that's true on both sides of the aisle. The trick, and it should be well known, there are dozens and dozens of bipartisan bills that have been passed out of committees that are waiting to go to the floor of the House. And they passed out many times unanimously. But the problem is the speaker won't bring them to the floor because the extremist wing of the Freedom Caucus believes that bipartisanship is a four-letter word. And so the speaker, who knows that he is going to have to weather some hits from his extreme right if we're going to pass a continuing resolution that we have today, for example, or appropriations bills funding the government that the Freedom Caucus and the extreme right are going to oppose vehemently, he can't use up his capital on other things that have bipartisan support, but wouldn't be supported by the Freedom Caucus. And so that's part of the reason why you have a historically inept Congress, where this Congress has passed fewer laws than any Congress, I believe, in history, certainly in modern history. And so that's part of the reason why you have such gridlock and stalemate here. It's not that there isn't any bipartisanship. It's that the anti-bipartisanship group has control over the floor.
It's wild because when bills are put on the floor under suspension, then it seems to pass with overwhelming majority. In fact, more Democrats voting for these bills in the end than Republicans. I want to be respectful of your time, so I just have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
And I really appreciate you coming on here and engaging with us. And
it's great. Online. It's good to say hello to chat.
Yeah. You can take a look later and see all the great comments they had for you later. Just real quickly, back in November, George Santos gave you some time to speak on his behalf, and you proceeded to make the case why he should be kicked out. How did that come to fruition, and why in the world would he give you time to speak to kick him out? Was it just to get back at his Republican colleagues because they weren't on board, just to get back at his Republican colleagues?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wasn't trying to trick him in any way. The Republicans the freshman Republicans in New York, in my home state, had brought the motion to expel him. And I had asked them if I could have some time to support their motion. But they didn't want to give me any because I've been bashing them for protecting George Santos for almost a year, which they did. So they didn't want to give me any time. So I realized, well, they controlled half the time and George Santos controlled half the time. And so I went up to Santos and I said, hey, if you don't mind, I'd like, if you don't mind yielding me some time, I'm really going to attack them, not you as much. And so he said, sure, I'm happy to give you time, because he was certainly not happy with them either. And my intent was genuinely to attack them for being Johnny-come-lately and doing this just to protect their political hide, when in reality they had been going along with the Republican Party protecting this fraudster and serial liar the whole time. And so I didn't really think much of the stuff I was going to say about George Santos, because I had been saying it over and over and over for a year. It wasn't anything new. And what was new was really the arguments against the other freshman Republicans. I guess I had not realized how it would appear when he yielded me time and I stood up to rise in support of the motion to expel the guy who just yielded me time. And so it didn't click with me that that's the dynamic that would play out. But I did proceed to call out his Republican colleagues, and I reiterated everything I had said about him. That was unremarkable to me, although I recognize that under the circumstances, it was a little odd.
It was fascinating. Had you ever spoken to him before?
I had said hello to him before, and I had spoken to him when I delivered the ethics complaint to his office back in January.
Okay, just curious. Then my final subject is about 2024. This victory for Tom Suozzi was such a big deal in New York's 3rd Congressional District. Leader Hakeem Jeffries said that it is the toughest swing district in New York. And I'm curious if you agree with his assessment of that. And if so, seems like a really good sign for Democrats to take back some of these swing districts in New York. And what lessons do you think we learned from Tom Suozzi's race that we can use moving forward in November?
It was a great result. Not only that he won, but that he won so convincingly. And Long Island has been trending against Democrats for several cycles now. And so that was really a great win. And we take a lot of lessons from that election, both in terms of the continued salience and resonance of abortion and individual freedom in the United States. And New York is obviously a state that has perhaps the most liberal reproductive freedom laws. And there's no problem if you are in New York right now, if you do choose to end a pregnancy, you can do that. But what was somewhat interesting in how much it resonated with the electorate is that it doesn't matter if you're in a blue state like New York or California, or if you're in a red state like Alabama, if Republicans in Congress are going to pass a national abortion ban, that will affect every state. And they have made it clear, many of them after Dobbs, that is what they want to do. And that really scares people in around the country, because a national abortion ban would overcome and supersede any state law. And so you'd have to abide by federal law first. And that was something that really resonated. The other thing that really resonated, and that I was happy to be in on the ground floor working with Tom on this argument, because I'm on the Homeland Security Committee and I saw this entire Congress, how immigration had been used as a political cudgel, and it was really lined up well for someone like Tom Suozzi, who has been in Congress, has been a true bipartisan problem solver. For him to be able to say, hey, I'm a Democrat. We want to solve our broken immigration system. we need to address it. And whether or not you agree with what the bill was that came out of bipartisan negotiations in the Senate, it is a step forward. It is a bipartisan solution to some of the problems that we're having at the border. And his opponent came out in support of MAGA Mike Johnson and Donald Trump against that bipartisan compromise bill because they want chaos at the border because it is politically beneficial to them. And Tom was able to very effectively make the argument that we Democrats are here to solve the problems and Republicans are here to create problems for their political benefit. And that flipped this immigration issue right on its head, especially in a district like New York 3, a suburban Long Island district, where you don't have a ton of MAGA people. You just have a lot more sort of moderate, small c conservative, socially liberal people who want to address the problems and are sick and tired of all of the politicization and partisanship that we really do see so much on the right. And so those two things are lessons that we will take as we head toward November.
Yeah, that is awesome to hear. I love how Republicans pick the fight on the southern border, and then they end up losing it, that fight, after amplifying it, which is just hilarious to me. And also, you mentioned bipartisanship, which we talked about previously. There is no appetite, it seems, in the Republican Party for bipartisanship within the base at all. But our side on the left, we actually want that. We people want to see problems solved after all this fighting over the last X number of years. So
it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, and just look at this immigration thing. I mean, it is crazy. They railed against the administration for the border all of 2023. Everything you heard all day long. Oh, the Biden border, the open borders, all this bogus. By the way, the borders are not open. But they went, we have to do something about it. We have to do something about it. So then the president asked for more money in the supplemental appropriations bill to address the border, because the real problem is that our system just does not have the infrastructure and the resources to deal with the number of people who are coming in. So he provided or proposed to give a lot more resources to address some of these issues. Well, then the Republicans said, no. The problem is not resources. The problem is policy. And so we need legislation to fix the problems. So the president decides, okay, let's go to the Senate and negotiate a bipartisan policy solution, a legislative solution to the problem. So they do. Then all of a sudden, the Republicans say, whoa, wait. We don't actually want a solution. We are going to kill that bill because, some bogus reason that we don't, but mostly just that we don't want a solution. I mean, Donald Trump said it out loud. It's not as if it's a secret as to why he wanted to kill it. He wanted to run on the issue in November. So they kill it. Then the Senate passes their bill, their national security supplemental bill, without border security. It comes back over to the House. And Mike Johnson says, wait a minute, we can't pass this national security bill that doesn't address the border. It's unbelievable that he could actually say that with a straight face. And so it's incredibly frustrating for sure, but it is also unbelievably hypocritical and cynical.
Yeah, I almost want the Senate to put H.R. 2 up for a vote just to watch the Republicans scramble to tank it, because it would be hilarious. Yeah. Final question about, speaking of our president, the number one criticism people have is that he's old, which I think is, it's a subjective thing. They could have the guy go skydive or something tomorrow and prove that he's just as young as anybody. But what do you say to people when they bring that up to you? I think he's too old. Personally, I hire the guy to make tough decisions behind closed doors, not to make great speeches. But I'm curious what you, someone who's in the arena, says in response to that concern by people.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, it's not like the other guy's young. Donald Trump they were in high school at the same time. Donald Trump can't remember his wife's name. He certainly can't remember plenty of stuff. And what is actually interesting about it is Donald Trump can't remember as much as Joe Biden has forgotten in his life, because Joe Biden's age, and I have seen this firsthand, gives him a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom and experience. And I'm going to give you a couple examples because this is a longer format, so we have time. First of all, I was in Israel on October 7th, and the president in the afternoon at Israeli time called me to check in on me, which was very kind of him to do. But during that conversation, which was about 6 hours after the war had broken out, after the attack had happened, he started going down the list of things that he was doing, not in any detail, but just in conversations that he was having and concerns that he had. And it demonstrated such an incredibly deep knowledge and understanding of what is the most complex geopolitical dynamic that we have in this world. And he was rattling off everything that he was worried about and everything that he was going to needed to do. And it wasn't as if he had to study up, because he has been doing this for 50 years. And he has a really firm, deep understanding of so many issues, foreign policy included. The other example is, you may recall in the debt ceiling negotiations last June, when we were about to hit the debt ceiling and the president and Kevin McCarthy were negotiating. And by all accounts, including Republicans' account, President Biden took Kevin McCarthy's lunch in that deal. And I spoke to some of the negotiators and who were in the room, and they relayed, I thought, was something really, really interesting, which is that his experience in going through so many of these negotiations over so many years allowed him to see 3 steps ahead of Kevin McCarthy, who had never done this. And he knew the things that he might give and the ways that he could get things back. And he was able to absolutely win that negotiation. And so those are just a couple examples, one domestic, one foreign, of all of the benefits of his 81 years of age, because it comes with so much knowledge and experience and wisdom that is incredibly valuable for someone leading our country, especially in a time of international concerns and where we're talking about, the potential for nuclear weapons in Iran. We're talking about the most serious, dangerous things. And as I sit here thinking to myself, do I want Joe Biden there, who understands intricately all of these issues, or do I want crazy person Donald Trump, who sucks up to Vladimir Putin and sucks up to, dictators in North Korea, and who has no idea about the geopolitical dynamics in this region? Is that who I want to be leading us right now? And so I think the president says it right. It's not a choice between Joe Biden and the Almighty. It's a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And there's no question Joe Biden is 81 years old, and some of the things that come with age are also, you can see with him. But I agree with you that what we want is someone to lead not only our country, but the entire world towards greater democracy, greater freedom, greater prosperity. And there's no one more qualified to do that right now than Joe Biden.
Yeah, that is great to hear. And I agree with you that he took Kevin McCarthy's lunch. We got more Democrats to vote for the bill in the end than Republicans. So obviously it was better for the Dems. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I don't want to take up any more of your time. This has been a real pleasure and a real treat for me and our online live streaming space that deals in politics. I hope we can do it again in the future.
Would love to. Really enjoyed it, and you do a great. You're very knowledgeable, very up to date, and some of the best questions I get.
Wow. Okay, you're gonna make me turn red. I appreciate that, Congressman Dan Goldman. Thanks again for your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Take care.